From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Holly Jones.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. LBC's Election Call with Eddie Mair.
Every Monday to Thursday at 6 o'clock, LBC's Election Call, where I shut up and you speak to the politicians. Tonight it's Sir Ed Davey, the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats. Earlier this year, he ran for the leadership of the party but lost to Joe Swinson. He was also the Secretary of State for Energy in the Conservative Lib Dem coalition between 2012 and 2015. Now, I mentioned a moment ago you might want to talk to him about Brexit, revoking Article 50, the Remain alliance, what the Lib Dems would do after the election with other parties, or some of the big issues, education, climate change, jobs. It's up to you. It's your election call to the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey. The number 0345 6060973. You can text 84850, tweet at LBC. We are live on LBC, of course. You can also watch the whole of Election Call on the LBC website, lbc.co.uk. You can watch us too on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and on some Wi-Fi connected dishwashers. Sir Ed, welcome to the programme. How's it all going?
It's going very interesting. Can I confirm for the record I'm not Ed Davey? Just so you know.
You may want to change that by the end of the hour.
No, I've got bad news for Ed Davey when he gets his criticism on Twitter. People know it's Ed Davey.
You can sort that out between you. Let's go to Jerry, who's in Whitley Bay in Newcastle. Jerry, you're through to Sir Ed.
Hi, let's hope two Eds are better than one. In the event of a hung parliament where the three main opposition parties, SNP, Lib Dems and Labour, are needed to stop the Conservatives getting in, are the Liberal Democrats going to do a deal with Labour to put Jeremy Corbyn in number 10, given that there is only 6 weeks until the 31st of January?
No, we're not going to do a deal with Jeremy Corbyn or with Boris Johnson. And there's a very simple reason for that, and that's we disagree profoundly with them on the issue of the day. The issue of the day is Brexit. Jeremy Corbyn is a Brexiteer. Boris Johnson is a Brexiteer. It's very difficult. And to add to that, you've got Jeremy Corbyn taking the Labour Party under his leadership to the left, quite hard left. And you've got Boris Johnson, now endorsed by Nigel Farage, taking the Conservative Party to the hard right. So it's very difficult to do that because there's not very much common ground. And so what we would do, let me tell you what we do, not just what we won't do. What we would do is vote issue by issue. This is not uncommon in other parliaments, in other parts of the world, Europe in particular, where opposition parties who've got a lot of MPs, and I hope we'll have a lot of Liberal Democrat MPs, even if we're not the largest party after this election, and we all vote issue by issue on Liberal Democrat policies and Liberal Democrat values.
So you will keep Boris Johnson in number 10?
No, I just said we'll vote against Boris Johnson.
Well, who will be Prime Minister?
Well, it's not just up to the Liberal Democrats. Let's be clear on that. I wish, hopefully the Liberal Democrats can choose Jo Swinson and she'll be the Prime Minister.
Well, I can't see two major parties doing that. Who are you going to put in number 10?
Well, they will have to come, whoever it is, to the House of Commons and win votes, but we'll vote them down when we disagree with them. And I can assure you, if anyone comes on Brexit, we'll vote that down. If everyone comes with right-wing economic agenda, we'll vote that down. And the hard-left economic agenda, we'll vote that down. You know, we're voted on a Liberal Democrat agenda. People are going to have to listen to us in the next Parliament. And that's why I think we're such an attractive party to vote for. We're either going to win, have the largest party, or people know a large number of Liberal Democrat MPs can keep the other parties.
You're voting for parliamentary paralysis.
No, not at all. I've explained.
How can you do anything if nobody has any power in number 10? How are you going to stop Brexit?
Well, let me help you. There are minority governments that have ruled before, both in this country, in Scotland, and in many other European countries. And minority governments have to put forward policies and try to get a consensus. And what we would say is if they come forward with their hard left or hard right policies, we'll vote that down. And we'll force them to represent, I think, the vast majority of people who are more reasonable and moderate. And, of course, we'll use our votes to stop Brexit.
Jerry, what do you think of the answers?
Well, I don't think it adds up at all, because at the end of the day, if you don't depose Boris Johnson from number 10, he remains in number 10. So he will own the order paper, which means we're back into the same old game of the opposition having to take the order paper in order to try and overrule the government, which is utterly ridiculous. The Liberal Democrats need to find a position of who they're going to work with in another general election.
Listen, I actually think it's the contrary. I think we're going to do really well and surprise people in this election. And if we don't win, we could well be the largest party. So I think, people may be coming to us.
And when you say you could well be the largest party, which polls are you looking at?
I'm looking at a lot of polls that we've seen. Let me tell you one poll where people actually voted. It was in the May European elections. The first time in 100 years, the Liberal Democrats beat both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party in a UK-wide election. So
all the tracking polls at this actual general election indicate your support is falling.
Well, I have to tell you, I think there's a long way to go.
No, I wouldn't dispute that.
And I actually think if you look at our target seats, our polling is really positive. And if we start winning our target seats in the way we're doing, we can really shake this election up. And so we actually are coming as a united party with a very clear message on the issue of the day. We want to stop Brexit. Moreover, we want to use the economic growth we'll get from stopping Brexit and get what we call the Remain bonus, which other parties won't have. And we'll use that to invest in our schools, invest in our education for the future, and we'll use it to tackle inequality. So I think not only do we have a strong message on the whole Brexit issue, we have a strong message because of our position on Remain to be able to invest in things that the people of Britain want.
Your election call to Sir Ed Davey of the Liberal Democrats. Peter is in Cambridge. Peter, fire away. Hello.
Hiya. So I have recently been involved in politics. I'm only 23. So my first vote was in the last election, and I voted Conservatives, and then I voted for Brexit in the referendum. What I want to know is, obviously, you've come out and you've said you want to revoke Article 50. If you were to come to power and that was to happen, how are you going to look after us Brexiteers? How are you going to keep us happy?
Really fair question, Peter. The way we want to keep you happy is we'll show if we got to that position, we would have the democratic mandate, and I wouldn't want to stop Brexit without a democratic mandate. But having got that democratic mandate, I think we need to reach out to people across the country to try to mend the divides we've seen, the divisions. It's one of the most depressing and alarming things we've seen after this referendum. The country has been divided.
And a democratic mandate would be a majority. You'd be the largest party. That's the only way you would describe it.
Well, what we've said is if we win power with 326 MPs, that would be a bit of political earthquake. We'll have gone from 12 to 326. No one could suggest that's not a democratic mandate. And we would use that mandate not just to stop Brexit, but more importantly, to invest in those areas of our country which have been left behind by the Conservatives.
But this is about the mandate you talked about. If you don't become the largest party, if you don't win 326 seats plus, you would agree you don't have any kind of mandate to revoke Article 50?
Well, not by ourselves, of course. And what we've said in that situation is we would want a people's vote to get a full mandate. Let's remember, it's been the Liberal Democrats who've championed the people's vote. We wanted a democratic mandate. We put 17 amendments down in the last Parliament trying to get that people's vote. I really regret that Labour MPs and obviously the Tories refused to have that people's vote. That would have been our preference. Now we've got a different opportunity for democratic mandate, and we'd only achieve that if we got a majority.
Peter, what about you?
I mean, we're going to have to agree to disagree, because,
Fair enough,
I voted for Brexit, and that's something that I'm quite passionate about. I mean, I studied law at university. One of the main courses I studied was European law. So, I'm quite aware of kind of how we work with them and how we don't work with them. And I just can't see how we can continue a relationship inside of the European Union. So I just don't see how revoking Article 50 is going to help division in the country.
Well, Peter, I was very privileged to represent this country on different European councils and sitting around a table with 27 other ministers. What I found was not only were we making decisions for the mutual benefit, so we all benefited from those decisions, but Britain's voice had the largest clout. we managed, on council after council that I was there, to get people to agree with us. And for my issue on climate change, I was able to lead a group called the Green Growth Group. I set it up to get the whole of Europe to be far more ambitious on climate change. So not only were we able to take steps under Liberal Democrats to massively increase renewables, but we persuaded other countries to take action. And given climate change is an international issue, you have to be at the table, in this case at the EU, to persuade other people to take action. And so that's one of the reasons I'm passionate about Britain remaining in the EU. Yes, it's about jobs and the economy, we've all heard that, but it's also about tackling these issues, international issues, climate change, peace, security, tackling international crime, that you simply cannot do if you're by yourself and not at the table with your neighbours and your friends.
Peter, what do you think of the answer?
Well, I mean, it was a good answer. I just don't think if we revoke Article 50, we're going to be taken as seriously as we have been in the past. So it would just be interesting to see. Obviously, I believe in democracy, and if it was to go back and the people were to decide, that we wanted to now stay in the European Union, or you were to get a majority and that was to happen, I would just be interested to see how much power and how much influence we'd have in the European Union. It's quite interesting.
All right, Peter, thank you very much for the question. It's Sir Ed Davey of the Liberal Democrats, here till 7 on LBC's election call, 0345 6060 973. More to come after the news at 6:15. Here's Holly Jones.
A woman and her half-brother have each been jailed for 35 years minimum for murdering 2 of their 6 children. 2 men have been arrested in East London on suspicion of terror offences. As an emergency Cobra meeting's held on the response to the latest flooding, the government's being accused of failing to take it seriously by opposition parties. LBC weather: showers clearing for most, very chilly with a widespread frost, particularly further north and for Scotland, a low of 2 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. There are queues on the M25 anti-clockwise. A lane's closed on the exit slip road at junction 1 for Swanscombe because of an accident. On the M25 clockwise, there are queues from junction 21A for St Albans to junction 24 for Potters Bar because the car's broken down. The exit slip road on the M25 clockwise at junction 23 for the A1M is also closed while a pothole is being repaired, so that's adding to the queues. It's slow on the M1 northbound because of an accident after junction 10 for Luton Airport, and there are queues on the South Circular Road westbound because of recovery work after a lorry hit a bridge this morning between the Tulse Hill Gyratory and Avenue Park Road.
LBC.
Sometimes it's difficult to find your perfect match. So at Mercedes-Benz, we've made finding the one really easy for you. Right now, you can get an approved used A-Class from just £179 a month. And with offers across the entire range, from SUVs to coupes, finding your perfect match couldn't be easier. Search Mercedes-Benz approved used and reserve your car online today.
Based on A180D sport models over 6 months old with an average selling price of £15,727, £3,332 advance, 48-month personal operating lease, 10,000 miles per annum, mileage and damage charges apply, no ownership. 18 plus, subject to status, ends 31st of December, participating retailers, Mercedes-Benz Finance, online reservation fee subject to availability and £500 refundable deposit.
Election 2019. Continuous coverage on LBC.
Sharing credit card details on scraps of loose paper. Finding battered receipts in the wash. Stressing out your accountant. Expense management doesn't have to be stuck in the dark ages. Say hello to Soldo. Company cards that do your expenses for you. Give your team prepaid cards to simply spend, snap the receipt, and that's that. Spend smarter. See the light at soldo.com.
We live in an age where you can stream any box set instantly. But staying on top of our pensions is anything but instant. PensionBee can transfer most old pensions together into one simple online plan, so you can manage your pension on your smartphone as simply as streaming that box set. Download the app or visit pensionbee.com today.
Authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Capital at risk.
I'm sorry, you have progressive memory loss.
When you hear these words, the outlook is bleak, but we're working to change that. We're Recognition Health, the brain and mind experts, and we're running clinical studies in London and Guildford. If you volunteer, you'll receive free access to a new generation medication, as well as comprehensive medical care. With your help, we can change the future of MCI, as in mild cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's disease.
You have progressive memory loss. But here's what we can do.
To find out more about Recognition Health and taking part, go to brainandmindexperts.com.
Play along with our 10-second teaser. Ready? True or false? More Monopoly money is printed in the US every year than real money. The answer is true. Very handy for buying Mayfair. If you got that right, you must be pretty smart. So you'll know who to choose for your business accounting, audit and tax affairs. Search Barnes Rofe. Clever accountants for business.
LBC's Election Call with Eddie Mair.
And tonight, Sir Ed Davey, Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats. Ben is in Grimsby. Hi, Ben. What's your question for Sir Ed Davey?
Hi, guys.
Hi, Ben.
So I heard Ed earlier talk about his target seats. What I'd like to ask is really how appropriate and actually how ethical some of the material that have been putting out in these constituencies is. Because I'll give you the example. So I've seen a bar chart which I think it's in a Shropshire constituency, but there's a few that they've put out there, and it says it has 3 bars. It has the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats neck and neck, and then Labour absolutely miles behind. And it says, if you want to avoid a Conservative government, the only choice is the Liberal Democrats. But what it actually doesn't show, well, it does show, but in really small print, is that what they actually asked the question was, if the only choice of government was Conservative or Liberal Democrats, who would you vote for? Which is not really what this election's about. And if you look at the 2017 election result, the choice was very much different to that. The Tories and Labour are neck and neck, and the Liberal Democrats are miles behind, and that's what the polling suggests as well. Of course, Liberal Democrats have gained ground, but not to the extent that they're claiming.
So this is misleading election leaflets, Ben?
I feel it's very misleading, yeah. And I think it's quite irresponsible as well, because they claim to be the party of Remain, but actually this kind of thing, if it's misinterpreted in the way they're intending it to be, it could lead to a hard Brexit with the Conservatives.
How do you respond?
Well, obviously, I don't know the particular leaflet that he's talking about, but let me talk about the key issue you made, whether 2017 figures are the right ones to go by. I just don't think they are. I mean, we got just over 7% of the vote in 2017, didn't have a very good election, but as you've admitted, we've increased significantly since then. We had amazing results in the local elections, and at the end of May we got just over 19%. So nearly treble our figures of 2017. So the idea that it is sensible to present the voters information that based on 2017, when there's been such a dramatic shift on the basis of, as you were talking about, the issue of Remain and Leave. So we have found in a number of seats in London, the South East, and indeed across the country, when you factor in the European election results and you look at the Remain Leave votes in those constituencies, it paints a very different picture. And I think that is simply true in so many seats. And one of the reasons why we are rather more confident in this election than we've been for many elections, because nearly over 48% of the people voted Remain. We are the Remain party. We've been clear on that, consistent. We've led that debate, and therefore we're finding a lot of lifelong Conservatives and lifelong Labour people who are Remain coming our way.
All right, but on the difficult leaflet, Ben, what do you think of the answer?
Well, he doesn't really answer the question, because I find it hard to believe that the Liberal Democrats isn't aware of the leaflets that are going out in these target seats.
I'm not, Jenny Knott, I'm afraid.
And the 2017 data probably isn't the one to look at, but the polling data is. And the polling data doesn't suggest that it's a choice between the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives.
Ben, can I make a suggestion? Because every Friday on the programme we have Full Fact in the studio, independent fact checkers. And if you email the details of what you're talking to me about to this email address, factchecking@lbc.co.uk, we'll make sure that gets in front of the Full Fact people on Friday, and we'll take a proper in-depth look. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Ben, thank you very much. If you've seen some dodgy leaflets, whoever they're from, factchecking@lbc.co.uk, and we'll do our best. There have been misleading leaflets, and we established this with Full Fact last week. Lib Dems winning and on the up after by-election victory in August 2019. That was misleading. The quote is an edited version of a Guardian headline. The quote was actually, I can't say, but this is a leaflet put out by the Lib Dems, and what the Lib Dems used was they suggested that this was a quote from the Guardian, Lib Dems winning and on the up, when actually it was the Guardian quoting Joe Swinson.
Okay. Well, listen, where there are those mistakes, I think they are wrong. What I say to people when I'm advising leaflets is you've got to show your source. You've got to be clear and transparent about where you're getting
How
the
big
figures.
should the print be? Ben was suggesting it was very small
It should
print.
it should be legible. Of course, people should be able to read it. And to be honest, it's very important to my mind that you make the source really clear, because it lends credibility. And so when people I tutor and advise on this, I make sure that they put that source so people can go and check it, because it's a much stronger message if you can show this is the source, this is where it comes from, go and check it yourself. And I'm not going to comment on my constituency, that would be wrong. I'm not allowed to, because Ofcom rules would come in. But I can take you to lots of constituencies where if you look at what they're saying, it's really clear they're using the information fairly, clearly and transparently.
All right. 0345 6060 973. Tristan has called that number from Greenwich. What do you want to ask Sir Ed Davey?
Evening, gentlemen.
Evening.
Firstly, I'm shocked that the Deputy Leader didn't know about the bar graph that Joe Swinson was pulled apart on live TV for, so that's a bit concerning. But my point really is, what is the future of the Liberal Democrats? And the reason I ask this is, we've had plenty of people crossing the benches to join you from all different colours, to join you because you are a Brexit party.
A stop
In the same
Brexit
way
party.
Sorry?
We're not a Brexit party, we're an anti-Brexit party.
That's it. That is what you are. They're not joining you for your fiscal policy. They're joining you because you're an anti-Brexit party. What happens in 3, 4, 5 years' time when Brexit's over? Do you just collapse? Do you splinter off? Do they go, do you know what, we'll go back to the blue side of the house? Are you
It's a very good question. It's a really good question. I mean, I think there's a lot more going on than just Brexit, vital and clear that it is. We've seen in the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn take the Labour Party to the hard left. There's all the issues around anti-Semitism. And we've seen a lot of Labour MPs either go independent or come and join us or go to Change UK, citing the fact that Labour, not just that Labour's got a confused position on Brexit, but it's gone quite extreme. And similarly to the Conservatives, you've seen the Conservatives go to the hard right. That's why they're getting endorsed by people like Nigel Farage. And you've seen One Nation Tories leaving them, sometimes the whip being taken away from them. So people like Matthew Parris, Michael Hestline, Ken Clark, Nick Bowles in the Evening Standard yesterday, advising people to vote Liberal Democrat. And they're doing that not just because of the European issue, but because the two old parties are going to the extremes. And there is this huge, big centre of British politics, where the vast majority of people are, who want moderate, reasonable policies on things like climate change, on things like investing in our schools, on things like mental health. Liberal Democrats have led the argument for more investment in our mental health services. And these, I think, are reasonable policies that people are coming to us because they see the other parties going to the extremes.
Tristan, what do you think of the answer?
Well, first of all, extreme is cancelling the democratic vote that the people made, so that's more extreme than anything else. And also with the Liberal Democrats, Ed, why is it that if anybody disagrees with you, they're either hard left or hard right? That language turns voters off.
Well, two things on that. First of all, I've said already on this programme that we would only stop Brexit with a democratic mandate. I don't think there's anything extreme about wanting the voters to have the final say. Secondly, I would never have used that language before when you had moderate Conservative leaders and moderate Labour leaders. Never used it under the Blair years or the Major years. It just seems to me, in fact, that the parties have gone to their final extreme positions. It's just a fact.
Can I just add to that? When you talk about extremes and about hard right and hard left and that, what about all the times that the Lib Dems voted with the Tories on austerity? That was a bit far right, wasn't it?
What about the times, though, just when we stopped them? Many times.
What about the times when you didn't and you voted with them?
All the times in the coalition.
Constantly.
This is a really interesting point, and I'm really glad you've raised it. George Osborne.
I don't trust you.
Well, can I finish? Can I finish?
VAT.
Can I finish? Do you want me to finish or not? Maybe you don't want me to finish.
No, I do. Yeah, but I want to.
Well, you keep interrupting me, so I can't finish, can I? What we did we stopped George Osborne slashing spending far greater. He wanted to slash welfare expenditure. I'll give you one example. Well, I could give you many examples. I'll give you one clear example. He wanted to freeze benefits. And we said no. And throughout the coalition, benefits were not frozen. What happened when we left? They passed a bill in 2015, which we voted against, to freeze benefits for 4 years. Scandalous. But it didn't happen in the coalition because we stopped it.
VAT tax bomb, that hits the lowest earners anyway. So you took out of one hand and gave with the other. So,
well, we took out millions of low-paid people out of income tax because the Liberal Democrat policy of raising the income tax allowance gave huge amounts to low-paid workers. I'm really proud of that.
Tristan, last word.
Pay back their student fees.
Well, I can also talk about all the help we gave through maintenance grants, which meant that despite the student fee policy being controversial, it helped people from low-income backgrounds go to university. And what happened in 2015 when we left? The Tories got rid of the maintenance grants. Shame on them.
Tristan, thank you very much for that. Sir Ed Davey here until 7 on LBC's election call. Be part of it, 0345 6060 973. Now, at 6:30, here's the news from Holly Jones.
Boris Johnson says the government will do absolutely everything it can to help those affected by flooding in Yorkshire and the Midlands. The Prime Minister has been chairing an emergency Cobra meeting promising money for businesses affected. Opposition parties had criticised the response, with Labour calling it woeful and the Liberal Democrats asking for a national emergency to be declared. A half-brother and sister from Sheffield have been jailed for at least 35 years each for murdering 2 of their 6 children. 35-year-old Sarah Barras and Brandon Machin admitted killing Tristan and Blake Barras in May. The court heard they were worried their children will be taken into care. A man's been arrested in East London on suspicion of plotting a terror attack. A second man, who's 21, is also being held, with searches taking place at 3 properties in the area. LBC weather: showers clearing for most, very chilly with a widespread frost, particularly further north and for Scotland, a low of 2 degrees.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast, LBC.
Do non-white pupils play the race card? Well, the head of Britain's so-called strictest school, Catherine Burbal Singh of Michaela Community School in Brentwood, said that they do in disputes with teachers. Dr. Shola Mos-Shogbamimu, who's a lawyer and founder of Women in Leadership.
I find her comments incredibly exclusionary, very obtuse and just wrong. She's saying, don't believe the children, believe the teachers.
She has said if you genuinely think it's racism, then have a word with her, the head teacher. Surely you accept some children are going to play the race card.
The response is not to say, don't believe the child.
Even if the child is being willfully misleading.
The only way you will find out is if you ask the right question.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7, LBC.
Make their Christmas wishes come true. Whether they want to jet off on Barbie's dream plane, run with the storm in Fortnite, or glide along on My Lovely Llama. At littlewoods.com, you'll find all the toys they love, all with inclusive delivery and free returns. Own Christmas. Shop now at littlewoods.com.
As Boris Johnson throws down the general election gauntlet, what's next for the biggest month in British political history? With the best team of political journalists in Westminster, turn to The Telegraph for clarity. Subscribe now at telegraph.co.uk.
Sharing credit card details on scraps of loose paper. Finding battered receipts in the wash. Stressing out your accountant. Expense management doesn't have to be stuck in the dark ages. Say hello to Soldo, company cards that do your expenses for you. Give your team prepaid cards to simply spend, snap the receipt, and that's that. Spend smarter. See the light at soldo.com.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
That's the sound of you, squeezing £2,000 out of your old polluting vehicle. The Mayor Sadiq Khan has introduced the new ULEZ car and motorcycle scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. You could get £2,000 for scrapping a car, and £1,000 for scrapping a motorcycle, which you could use for a newer, cleaner vehicle or other ways to get around. The scheme is only available to people on certain means-tested benefits or non-means-tested disability benefits who own a polluting car or motorcycle. Check if you're eligible. Search TfL Scrappage. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
You're in leakage, you're in leak.
Tenna Men. Pants and pads. Buy online or in shops. Tenna Men. Keep control.
If a bank or financial advisor persuaded you to move your savings into an ISA, unit trust or investment bond and you lost money, you can make a claim for compensation. If unsuccessful, you can then refer it free to the Financial Ombudsman. Now, if the prospect of pursuing a claim feels a little daunting, or you just don't have the time, then you can ask Goodwin Barrett for help. To discover how much you may be owed, text GOOD to 60777. Text GOOD to 60777 now.
Goodwin Barrett. LBC's Election Call with Eddie Mair. Text 84850.
We're live on LBC. We're also envisioned on the LBC website, lbc.co.uk. We're on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and also coming through the tinfoil on your head. John is in Portsmouth. John, what's your question for Sir Ed Davey of the Liberal Democrats?
Ed. I'm wondering what your views are on the fact that Nigel Farage has stood down all his candidates in the Tory seats.
Yeah, well, I think it says an awful lot about the modern Conservative Party. The fact that Boris Johnson gets endorsed by Nigel Farage says all you need to know. First of all, about the Brexit deal, extremely hard and very, very damaging for our country. But moreover, that someone with Nigel Farage's views could back someone in the Conservative Party. And I think there'll be a lot of Tory members, Tory MPs, Tory voters in particular, who will be worried about voting for a Conservative Party that has such a endorsement. And, you know, we're seeing a bit of a track record with this, aren't we, with Boris Johnson. He gets endorsements from Donald Trump and Nigel Farage. I mean, look at, when you judge someone, judge him by their friends.
John, why did you ask the question?
Basically, because I believe on the grounds of what Nigel Farage promised when he was standing his candidates in supposedly all 650 seats in the UK, his vision was that if he didn't get his clean break Brexit, he'd stand in every single seat to punish the parties in Parliament. Well, now he's taken a side. As far as I'm concerned, that's not what he was standing as the Brexit party. So he's no longer got any relevance as far as I'm concerned.
Well, John, you might be pleased to know that we are obviously asking Nigel Farage to appear on this programme. I don't know whether he's ever free weeknights 6 till 7, but we're asking him, and I hope before the election happens we have him on the programme.
But can I just come back on that point? I think if you listen to what Nigel Farage said at the press conference, one of the reasons he's done this is he's worried that Liberal Democrats will do incredibly well. He talked about the range going from southwest London through to Hampshire down to Land's End, where he thought that Liberal Democrats were threatening the Conservatives. We're still threatening the Conservatives, despite his announcement. And he is worried that if we win a lot of seats, there's a real chance we can stop Brexit. There's a real chance we could get a people's vote. And he's worried that the people of Britain have changed their minds. I think they have.
You mentioned the people's vote earlier. This text question asks, what would the question be?
Well, first of all, we've argued that Remain should be on the ballot paper. The alternatives would be partly for the Brexiteers to decide in Parliament. Clearly, the obvious candidate is Johnson's deal, particularly now Farage has endorsed Johnson and presumably his deal. There was discussion in Parliament about whether no deal should be on the ballot paper. That would have been a debate between Parliament, Electoral Commission and so on. But it does look now the two sides are clear. You've got the really extreme Brexiteer position of Johnson and Farage with Johnson's deal, even though he couldn't explain it the other day, versus remaining in the EU.
But a two-way choice is preferable for you.
That looks the obvious one, particularly now Farage has endorsed the hard Brexit of Boris Johnson.
Let's turn to Sam in Amersham now. Hi, Sam. What's your question for Sir Ed Davey?
Hi, Eddie. Hi, Ed. Good to speak to you. My question is, why did you allow Boris to get his wish and give him an election now when you had him over a barrel and he had no majority and he was losing vote after vote after vote? It didn't seem to be the obvious thing to do when frankly, we're now risking the possibility of a hard right Brexit if he does get a majority now. It seems very, very risky.
I'm really pleased you asked that question, because we thought long and hard about this. We were wanting a people's vote. The numbers weren't there. And there was a real danger that he was going to get that hard deal Brexit through that worries you. Let's remember, he got the second reading of his Brexit bill. 19 Labour MPs backed Boris Johnson. He got that bill through Parliament. And many of us were worried that he would continue to get that bill, and we would leave the European Union before the British people had a chance to vote. So what we decided was that Liberal Democrats would try and work with us to try to get an election before Britain had left the European Union, so the British people could have a say. It's not perfect. We'd have much preferred a people's vote. We've argued for it. We're the leaders of that, and we'd have preferred that. Unfortunately, quite a lot of Labour MPs weren't prepared to back us in the lobbies on that. We were not winning the votes on that. And this was the best next way to make sure there was a democratic verdict before we left the European Union.
What do you think of the answer, Sam?
It just leaves me with a sinking feeling, because there is no good winner in this election as far as I'm concerned. Yes, the Liberal Democrats may well get double, maybe even triple the number of seats they've got now, and I wish you all the best, sincerely.
Thank you.
But I can't see either Corbyn or Johnson being Prime Minister as being a positive thing, and it leaves me very, very worried.
Thank you very much for that. Cheryl in Sutton says, please ask Ed Davey what the Lib Dems are doing for social care and the elderly.
Oh, right. Well, first of all, we've got a pledge which was linked to our pledge in 2017 that we want to raise income tax by a penny in the pound to generate over £6 billion a year for the NHS and social care. That is going to be a key pledge. The other thing we've said is we want to go back and review what we tried to do in the coalition, which the Conservatives stopped after we left, which was to implement something called the Dilnot Review. So Andrew Dilnot did this major review of funding elderly care, and we supported it. The Tories said they supported it, and as soon as we left, they backtracked. And what that commission would have done, it would have said that the state would pick up the bill. If you've been in care for 2.5 years and were still needing care, then the state would pick up the bill, and you'd only have to pay for the first 2.5 years. And that made sense to me, because you can insure and save for that sort of period. But if you're one of the unlucky people who have, say, earlier onset dementia, and you're in a care home for 10, 15 years, no one can save that amount of money. No private insurance would ever insure you for that. And that's where the state should come in. And it just mirrors what we do with the NHS. The NHS is a collective insurance where we all say we all want all of us to have the best health care, so we all pay our taxes to insure ourselves. And if you're one of the unlucky ones who has a disease which needs expensive treatment, surgery, or drugs, then you get that. And Sir Andrew Dilnot, we supported him, wanted to apply the principles of the NHS to this social care problem. So that's what we do.
John in Maidstone, what's your question for Sir Ed Davey? Welcome.
Hello there. I'd like to ask the MP about his opinion on the economy in Europe in terms of Greece, Italy, Germany, and say Spain. What's his thoughts on those economies?
Well, they all differ. And in my experience, European councils, when we were promoting free trade and the single market, that was one of the best ways to get economic growth across the whole of Europe. And that's one of the reasons I'm so worried about Brexit, because we will reduce our access to the single market. We'll have lots of custom forms which will get in the way of trade, and that will make us all poorer. And one of the advantages that the Europeans will have over us is they'll retain those benefits. And if you look at growth in the last few years, Britain has been, after the referendum in 2016, has fallen to the bottom of the growth league of the main economies in the world, when we were actually doing pretty well before.
John, what's your follow-up?
Well, what's his opinion on the growth in terms of, what's his opinion on Italy, for example, being in recession, Germany heading for a recession, Greece is on the floor, on its knees, Spain being in very difficult times. What's his Why would he want to handcuff us to those economies?
Although, John, it should be said that the UK only just avoided recession in the last quarter.
Yes.
Well, I'm happy to answer John's question. I mean, you've quoted one or two economies that aren't doing very well. I agree with you. But what about the economies that are doing well? Germany actually is doing better than we are. Look at countries like Holland and Belgium and the Scandinavian countries and the Baltics, and look at Romania. That's growing really fast. So you can't. It's a mixed picture. It always has been and always will be. But the issue with Europe, and why being a member of the European Union is very sensible, is it means you can do more trade. It means you've got a wider market. And it doesn't exclude you, as Nigel Farage sometimes tries to say, it doesn't exclude you from trading with many, many other countries. I went, when I was a minister, on trade missions to India and to China, and we were having our businesses doing lots of trade there. What really worried me, I'll tell you what really worried me, was the Germans had more support from their government for their businesses than we did. And what that goes to show is you can increase trade, and I was a trade minister, if you get behind your businesses and get behind your support, and we've traditionally not done that very well in this country.
John, you have the last word.
Yes, so he's kind of smeared what I was saying in terms of talking about trade. I was talking about economy, and he mentioned about the smaller economies within Europe. They are smaller economies. We are one of the top economies in Europe. We've done very well, I think, actually, to stay out of recession in one way, shape or form when the other big economies in Europe have slipped in or have been in it for a while. And
that's not true.
I think it's absolutely, let me finish. I think it's absolutely irresponsible of any MP that wants to handcuff us to that sinking ship of economies.
It's simply not true. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to disagree with you totally on this, I'm afraid.
Okay.
The facts are completely against you. And if you look at the way our growth has gone since leaving, since the Brexit referendum, we've lost, according to independent analysis, about £72 billion in lost output. It's been very, very damaging.
That's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happens in uncertainty. Until you're a certain economy, you will not be invested in. And so we are, if we remain in the EU, we would become an uncertain economy because the whole of the EU is slipping in its economics.
John, I'll give you the last word, although Ed has made the point he disagrees with you vehemently. We will hear more from you, Sir Ed Davey, in just a second. What do you want to say to Sir Ed Davey about the Liberal Democrats and their policies? Now's your chance to ask. 0345 60 60 973. Here's the news, 6:46. Holly Jones.
The Prime Minister's held an emergency Cobra meeting on flooding in South Yorkshire and the Midlands, insisting the government is doing everything it can to help. A half-brother and sister from Sheffield have been jailed for at least 35 years each for murdering 2 of their 6 children. Lord Bramall, the former head of the British military who fought on D-Day, has died at the age of 95. LBC weather, showers clearing for most, very chilly with a widespread frost, particularly further north of Scotland, a low of 2 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. There are queues on the M25 anti-clockwise to the Dartford Tunnel. There's a lane closed because of an accident at Junction 2 for the A2. On the M25 clockwise, the exit Slip Road at Junction 23 for the A1M stays closed. That's while a pothole's being repaired, so there are queues from Junction 21A for St Albans. It's slow on the M1 northbound because of an accident after Junction 10 for Luton Airport, so one lane is closed. There are queues on the South Circular Road westbound because of recovery work after a lorry hit a bridge this morning between the Tulse Hill Gyratory and Avenue Park Road. And there are delays on the A13 heading into town. There's a lane closed between Movers Lane and Barking and the Beckton roundabout because the car's broken down.
Coming up at 7, Ian Dale leading Britain's conversation. Next on LBC.
A credit limit of up to £1,500. What do you have to do to get it? Simple. Get online and check if you're eligible for an Ocean credit card in minutes without affecting your credit score. For your Ocean credit card, visit ocean.co.uk now and get all that from Ocean. Intelligent Lending Limited is a credit broker. Capital One, the exclusive lender. Representative 39.9% APR variable. Borrow and spend responsibly.
All right, Ness, how's it going, all right?
All right, Dave, how's it going, all right? All right, Bryn.
All right, Smith.
Unlimit the shows you love this Christmas on Vodafone. Watch Gavin and Stacey on Gold with Now TV. Included on our unlimited data plans with entertainment. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Available on Unlimited and Unlimited Max plan. Maximum download speed applies to Unlimited plan. Speed and coverage may vary. Full terms on Unlimited and Entertainment at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Betting with a traditional bookie is like an orchestra that only plays the triangle. But on the Betfair Exchange, you have more ways to bet with more opportunities to win. You can even lay a bet, which means betting on something not to happen, or set your own odds and see who takes them on. Why not give it a go? The Betfair Exchange.
T's and C's apply. Exchange basic package customers pay 2% commission. Other charges may apply. 18+. BeGambleAware.org.
For many sufferers of complex regional pain syndrome, life can be a living hell. If this is you, St Pancras Clinical Research would like to hear from you. We are conducting a new clinical research trial for CRPS at our comfortable clinic in central London. For more information, please go to stpancrasclinicalresearch.com. That's stpancrasclinicalresearch.com.
Once in a while, a movie comes along that leaves critics and audiences breathless. That movie is Le Mans 66.
We're gonna beat Ferrari with a Ford.
Are you nuts? Starring Academy Award winners Matt Damon and Christian Bale.
They hate guys like us because we're different.
Don't miss the incredible true story of Ford v Ferrari.
Trust me.
It's one of the year's must-see films. It's sensational, a triumph.
Together, we're gonna make history.
Le Mans 66.
You're gonna want to see this.
In cinemas and IMAX November 15.
If you're collecting your prescription, don't assume you can claim it for free. Not all benefits entitle you to free prescriptions. And if you claim when you're not entitled, you could face a penalty charge of up to £100. Thankfully, there's a simple way to find out if you should be paying. Search Check Before You Tick online and use our eligibility checker to find out if your benefits mean you can claim for free. Or you can ask your pharmacy team. So always remember to check before you tick. This was brought to you by the NHS.
Millions of people are missing out by having a current account that doesn't pay them any interest on their hard-earned money. TSB offers interest to all their Plus account customers for no monthly fee. Plus, you can stop your friends and family missing out by recommending the Plus account to them. And when they switch, you'll both earn £75. Search online or visit your local branch. Terms and conditions apply.
LBC's Election Call with Eddie Mair. Call 0345 6060 973.
Sir Ed Davey, the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats, is here, and Steve is on the phone from Bristol. Steve, what's your question for Sir Ed Davey?
Yes, good evening.
Hi.
Ed, your party conference voted through to legalise cannabis. I'm just wondering on your thoughts on that and the logic behind it.
Yeah, well, the war on drugs and the war on cannabis just hasn't worked, and we're having a lot of young people getting seriously ill. We're getting the drug barons are getting away with it. And our proposal, based on a lot of independent work, based on what's been working in some other countries, is to have a regulated market. And by having a regulated market, you can ensure that the cannabis that people are using isn't the strong stuff that's causing a lot of the problems. So you can protect the people who are consuming it. You can really go after the bad guys because they won't have a market anymore, and you can really use the money that you get from taxing the cannabis to invest in the police so they can go after the criminal gangs. And I think it's a win-win-win. And doing that, you get the protection for the youngsters, you go after the bad guys, and you, I think, begin to turn this tide of misery.
Why do you ask, Steve?
Well, not my day job. I have a day job, but I volunteer and run a charity that works with homeless people. And I can tell you that drugs is one of the biggest scourges
I agree.
I deal with. And I have to say two things to that point. One, you're going to offer something that is less strong, which they won't want. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you're going to tax it, it will be more expensive than what the illegal people are offering. Logic to me says that isn't going to work.
Well, I'm going back with evidence, and we're not just making this up. We're going back on both expert evidence and what's been working elsewhere. Well, if you look at what's happened in places like the Netherlands, in places like Portugal, in places like Canada.
Portugal is, sorry, I have to stop you there. Portugal, the second biggest city in Portugal, the mayor, who was absolutely committed to legalising cannabis, he was a big proponent of it. He is now campaigning for the Portuguese to change the law back to make it illegal. So that isn't actually the case.
Well, I'd have to look at that particular example, but I do know there are examples around the world where it's actually worked really well.
Steve, go on.
And so we want to go on the evidence, and maybe there's things to learn from Portugal. I personally believe in a politics which looks at evidence.
Go on, Steve.
Okay, well, I'll say this. 90% of burglaries are for drug use, to fund drug use, okay? And I see the devastation over the last 15 years of what drugs do. And I'm really sorry, but taxing it and making it freely available, I just cannot see it. All it's going to do is ruin people's lives. And I can just say that if you really want to look at something, please read Patrick Coburn's book on his son, who died.
Well, that's the problem. We are seeing so much misery, so much death, so much crime, all related to drugs.
If the principle on cannabis is good, why not extend this to all illegal drugs?
Well, because the evidence is much stronger with cannabis, with the international evidence, the evidence from those people who are, on the commissions that look at the drugs and the classification.
But if you're talking about public health and harm and taxing and protecting people.
Well, I believe in evidence. I don't know what other people believe in. I tend to like policies that are based on what the experts, what experience, and what the science shows. And in taking this approach, which is a very measured approach, in bringing regulation, going after the bad guys who would then be outside the law even more clearly, and you'd have resources to go after them, that seems to me a way forward. If anyone says, and I'm afraid your caller, I mean, I've got a lot of sympathy for him in the sense that he's doing his best to help people, but no one can say the current policy is working. He's seeing the damage it's doing.
Steve, what's a better policy, do you think?
I'm just curious. I just can't. I mean, for example, you're saying you're going after the bad guys. Why aren't you going after them now? I mean, the point is this. If somebody is caught in possession of cannabis, how do you know if that cannabis, if you were legalising it, that it was a legalised version of cannabis or one that was bought from a dealer? You have no idea where they bought that particular cannabis from. And in Portugal, cannabis use has gone up by 40%. So if you're saying that you're happy for cannabis use to go up, then legalise it. But seriously, I've spent the last 15 years dealing with people who are absolutely destroyed by cannabis. And I'm sorry, but it's the wrong approach.
Steve, thank you very much. I want to move on to another question, if I may. James is in Brighton. What's your question, James? Hello.
Hello. My question is this. Is it too late for a Lib-Lab electoral pact? Now that Farage has said he will withdraw the threat of splitting the Brexit vote?
Well, there was never going to be an electoral pact in the sense that we have huge disagreements.
No, I'm asking you to have one, because otherwise there's a shoe-in for Boris.
Well, I'm going to try to explain why I think it's difficult, but it's also, let me give you the clear with respect to the Remain, because one could have seen arrangements with some genuine Remain Labour MPs, because I'll be frank with you, there are some genuine Remain Labour MPs. But the Labour Party were approached by the organisation called Unite to Remain. And it was Unite to Remain that brokered the agreement between the Liberal Democrats and the Greens and the Liberal Democrats and Plaid Cymru, where we have worked together for the reasons that you want. They approached the Labour Party, and the Labour Party said, we will not be a part of this at all. So I regret that, because I do think parties need to try to work together to stop this national disaster. But the Labour Party wouldn't allow their Remain MPs to be part of it. It's partly because of the rather confused position the Labour Party is in, with a leader who is genuinely a Brexiteer. So I can understand why you're frustrated. Many of us are frustrated. But Jeremy Corbyn has led his party to this confused and incoherent position and made alliances impossible, agreements impossible, and refused to work with Unite to Remain.
Final question from Jack in Lambeth on text. Please ask Ed Davey what he's going to do for me as a 12-year-old with dyslexia and for my friends with autism.
Well, special needs is an issue close to my heart. I have a son who's got special needs. And when you look at the issues, I see it in my constituency, I see it across the country, special needs has been dramatically underfunded. There's been a new programme called the Education Health Care Plans, which are now being rolled out. And they've had some teething problems, but the fundamental problem is they've not been fully funded. So part of the Liberal Democrat proposals, and I've been costing our manifesto, we have specific increase in support for special needs, which will help people who've got autism and who've got other special needs, including your caller.
All right. Thank you very much for your contribution tonight.
Thank you.
On election call. Sir Ed Davey, if you liked what he said, you can tweet him at Sir Ed Davey. If you didn't, it's Ed Davey. Election calls back tomorrow at 6. I'll be here tomorrow from 4. Tom Swarbrick, your host on LBC from 10. Here he is, Ian Dale.
And if you don't like me, it's Ian Payne. Now, coming up over the next 3 hours at 8, I'll be joined by the man who could have been our Prime Minister. Jeremy Hunt, the former Foreign Secretary, will be joining me in the studio for his first lengthy interview since the leadership election. He'll be taking your calls as well after 8:30. So much to ask him, really, isn't there? What would he have done differently had he been Prime Minister? Would he have been able to get the kind of deal that Boris Johnson got? And I'd be interested to know how many new hospitals he thinks the Conservatives are building, because there does seem to